From the Pink Lady to the Holstein, the Pacific Rose to the Honeycrisp. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Jason Burns.
And I'm Danny Nucci, and this is the What About podcast. And what the fuck did you just say?
Those were varieties of apples.
Varieties of apples. Did you go deep down the apple rabbit hole?
I just hit the kitchen. You know, my wife keeps a full variety of apples on hand at all times.
She does not.
She does not. She doesn't even cook. She barely knows her way around the kitchen.
I was going to say, there's no way. I don't see it.
No, she doesn't cook. She makes a mean omelet, though, which you can't really put apples in, as far as I know.
No, I don't know of many apple omelets.
Do you have a favorite fruit?
How long have you known me? You don't know what my favorite fruit is? It's watermelon.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's one of those fruits that, and we kind of get into this with our guest, Chuck Wendig, but it's one of those fruits that you can really only get in season. Anything out of season tastes completely different.
Yeah, no, I mean, but you know, you give me a ripe in-season watermelon and I'm happy.
Like a one sitting, you can get through the whole thing?
Oh man, if you don't take it away from me, it'll be done. I will, and then I'll feel sick afterwards. But yeah, what a well-reviewed book this was.
I really enjoyed it.
Black River Orchard, Chuck Wendig. Or if you're German, it's Wendig. Prolific writer in many formats. So without further ado, Chuck Wendig.
You got the nice, rich leather couch in the background. That's a writer's room right there.
Right? It's my reading couch.
Talk about a writer's room. Do you sit in different parts of your writer's room to write different formats? I mean, I was looking at your stuff, Chuck, and I was like, how many formats does this guy write in? It's unbelievable. It's very much like Jason Burns over here.
Yeah, there you go.
It's either a short story, it's a role-playing story, it's a friggin' comic book, it's a novel. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's too much. I gotta stop.
No, we'll stop when we're dead, Chuck. That's the thing.
There you go. Exactly right.
From what I've read, please don't stop.
Well, I'm going to start things off, Chuck, just by, you mentioned that your reading couch. What do you do more of today? Do you read more or do you write more? And does one feed the other?
Oh, I mean, they definitely feed each other. Yeah, but I probably end up writing more just in terms of time, because like writing is, my morning up until lunchtime or a little after, and reading is usually only like maybe, half an hour a day.
Mm-hmm. Is that a nighttime thing, like to get sleepy?
It's afternoon time. If I do it at nighttime, I'll get 2 pages and then
you're out.
Game over.
What is that? I have the same thing. I get in bed. I'm like, oh, cool. I'm going to get some reading done. No.
Yeah, no. It's basically literary melatonin.
No, and I've even got the kit. I've got the iPad. Open. I'm thinking, oh, the bright light, it'll keep me up. I can read. No,
that's called getting old.
Right?
Is that what it is? I have the AGE.
Mm-hmm. You do.
So do you write I'm always interested in the writer's process. I always ask Jason about it because I just don't understand it. I don't get like deadlines and you have to write it and it's got to get done and all that. It makes me insane, the thought of it. So do you have a system that you developed? Is it something that has worked for you for a long time? How has it evolved? And action.
Yeah. God, yeah. So, I mean, like some of it's fiddly. Like I'll do an Excel spreadsheet if I'm really on like a tight deadline. How much do I have to write every day? And I'll sort of clock, whether I'm doing that or not. But generally it's just like a sit down every morning and pray I got some juice in the tank and try to write as much as I can, 1,000, 2,000 words, and hope that gets me somewhere that I need to be.
So you shoot for a number of words.
Yeah. Well, yeah, ideally. I used to. Like now it's a little more flexible. Like I try not to get too married to feeling, because some days now I'll be like 500 words or 5,000 words. Like I wrote the one book I wrote, Wanderers, totally blew out of the water the way I wrote books. Like I thought I knew how to write books, and then it taught me I did not know how to write books. And so it changed everything that I work about process. And that was good. It was good that it did, because I wasn't, I think there's this thing that writers can do where they get really sort of married. They sort of mythologize and folklorize their process. And it was useful for me to get that, to get shut of that, basically to shut that down.
Well, you also have to have a certain, you have to have a certain reliability in being able to produce, yes, especially at this point.
Yeah.
Self-management. That's what a big part of it is.
Right.
I'm sorry, what was that? Self-management?
Self-management, yes.
Not familiar. I'm no, apparently you two are quite familiar with the process. I am not.
No, but it's not always the case. Like with me, some days I'll just say, Chuck, fuck it. I'm not going to write my words today. I'll make it up tomorrow and double them. And then, of course, that day you say, well, I'm not feeling it today. I'll double them the next day. And then it just compounds on top of each other.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then you're buried. Then you're very sad.
Well, so I want to talk about this novel for a second, right? Because I was reading some of the reviews about it. But before I do that, before I talk about the novel, what I wanted to ask you was, having written on deadlines or writing, other people's properties, was it a relief to write a novel again, or had you been in this process before? Because I know you were doing the Star Wars stuff and some other properties. What's the difference for you? And is it nice to be able to do your own thing again?
Yeah, yeah. Like I've been doing novels and to some degree my own novels since 2012, and the Star Wars stuff was, I mean, also technically novels, just not anything that I owned per se. Which, I mean, I wish I owned Star Wars. That'd be great.
That'd be cool. By the way,
I don't think you'd be talking to us, Chuck.
No, I'd be out. I'd be
sure.
Yeah, whatever.
Sure. Good for us that you don't. Go on.
Yeah, that couch behind me would be made of like human skin.
Sure.
I'd be like, whatever.
Sure. Which is a different subject. We'll do that next time. Go
different
on.
subject. Yeah, couch materials. So, no, I always like doing my own thing, and both for the sort of creative joy of doing it, but also for that kind of, like I own it. Like I can do what I want with it. I mean, even though I have a publisher, like I can sell it to other foreign publishers. I can sell it to film and TV. I can license it for games. I can do, there's opportunities there to make this thing exist just beyond this one, piece of material. Whereas when you don't own it, that doesn't happen.
Well, and there's also that side of things. I spent a large part of my comic book career working on licensed materials, and then, and I'm not trying to put this job down, but there's the people in the licensing department who have to sort of prove that their job is worthwhile and give you notes on things just to give you notes on
Just
things.
to give you notes.
And sometimes you're like, wow, this feels like it's just because it's a slow day in the office and I got to make some changes.
Have you ever had them like argue with each other, like multiple people giving notes, like by committee?
I have, and there's a lot of contradicting notes in PDFs, and you're like, which one am I supposed to go with?
They don't tell you.
No. I had the best note, and I kept it. Many years ago, I worked on a Child's Play Chucky comic book, and one of the characters was like an over-the-top, like douche character, and in it, he calls somebody a wiener snake. And then the note was like, we can't say wiener snake. Let's say dong snake or something. They didn't want the word wiener. They wanted a dong. And I was like, wow, this is the weirdest, most puzzling note I've ever had.
No wiener snake.
So Black River Orchard takes place in your neck of the woods where you live and you grew up, right? I mean, essentially.
Yeah, essentially.
So what was the inspiration for? I mean, obviously it was around you, and the genre is apparently your wheelhouse to the umpteenth degree. But so what inspired you to write this one, or where did this one come from?
Yeah, Black River Orchard is like, first of all, because I grew up in this area, I'm used to all the really weird history here, because I mean this is like kind of like cradle of the American Revolution type stuff, but that can also mean some pretty dark, messed up history. And you also get a lot of really weird folklore in the area.
And you studied religion, correct?
I did, yeah, religion and English, yeah, in college. So that stuff always fascinates me, just from a storytelling perspective. But then the apple thing, once I started to, because like I didn't care about apples. Like apples were not a thing I cared anything about. But once I kind of started to learn,
boy, how that has changed.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Sorry, go on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's all right. Yeah, it's just they're weird. Like agriculture is a strange thing, and we have a lot of small farms and big farms around us. But sort of seeing how different pieces of produce or even meat or whatever like gets to your table, and how what gets to exist and what doesn't just became kind of interesting to me. And then how that all ties to history gets extra fascinating.
And you took some shots at the Honeycrisp, and I have 2 young kids, and in my house Honeycrisp is the one, man.
Right? I know I mean I like the Honeycrisp, but I joke that like asking someone what their favorite apple is and they're like Honeycrisp is like asking someone what their favorite Transformer is and they're like Optimus Prime. You're like, I mean obviously it's Optimus, but can you name another Transformer? And they're like, no. You're like, yeah, Honeycrisp. I get it. It's a good apple. And apparently they're better. The closer you get to Minnesota, the better they get. as I understand.
All right, I didn't know that. See, now you have all kinds of probably Apple facts and knowledge that you never thought would be in your brain.
Way too much.
Just first of all, I didn't know there was that many different kinds of apples, and some of the ones that you mentioned was like, I've never seen those at the store. I've never seen those at the fancy stores.
Nope. And you probably won't ever.
Right? It's like hipster apples, I guess.
Kind of, yeah. Like, but they're like old, like hipster apples in that way that like they like old stuff, old new stuff they can rediscover. Yeah.
What I loved about this book, Chuck, was your ability to write from different perspectives. I mean, holy shit, that you can write like a teenage girl, but also
Secret alter ego. Don't tell me.
my favorite chapters are the black velvet, orange lump.
Oh, the cats.
Yes, there was this line that stayed with me. A cat could dine on indignation for days. I thought that was, I'm an animal guy, and I was like, holy shit, that just sums up every cat ever.
The cat. It's cats. All cats. Except for those cats that are like dogs. It's like cats, cats.
Yeah, right. How do you, on those days when you're trying to reach your word quota, will you stop when one character is done, or can you just shift into that other writing style, that other character brain, that other gender or age bracket?
Yeah, I mean, I can usually switch if I've got that like room to do that. For in the day's writing. But I also do like to sort of sometimes stop in the middle of where I'm at, because then it's like I've fallen off a cliff. Like I feel like I'm in the midst of something. It's like, narrativus interruptus. Like I get, the next day it gets a little more energy to start back up again if I kind of end almost in the middle of something, as opposed to concluding something and then having to kind of start the engine cold the next day.
Did you expect to write such a large book?
Not this one. I thought my other ones are big, but I thought like this one could be kind of lean, and then it just kept happening.
Did you when you were putting the elements of the story together, did you really think, I can tell this in a conventional 400-page book?
It would be a little shorter.
Well, it's funny. I was reading one of the reviews and I loved what it said. This is a big book, like many of Wendig's books are, but like his previous novels, Black River Orchard is paced so well and is so addictive that it reads very, very fast.
I'll take it.
Reading the reviews of your book just literally made me go to the Doylestown bookshop and buy the hardcover so I could have it on my library. I was so excited. There was a couple of other ones that I thought were really cool. I don't want to share these with the listener because you read certain reviews and you're not sure. I mean, down the list, it was basically similar things. The other one that was my favorite was this. It said, and this is Publishers Weekly, Wendig, that's you, is brilliant at slowly, that's you, by the way, at raising the plot's emotional temperature and making his characters caught in a creeping nightmare feel both real and empathetic. This masterful outing should continue to earn Wendig comparisons to Stephen King, which brings me to my next question.
Yeah.
Stephen King, did you come to it honestly?
As in, like, did I like try?
Well, did you go? I'll read, because obviously the genre is something you've been interested in for a long time.
Yeah.
Did you start with Stephen King?
Yeah, Robert McCammon was the first horror I read, and then King kind of got folded in there with like then Kuntz and Barker and Poppy Bright and all this. So it kind of went pretty deep at that point. I'm first of all, King is a master, and I don't mind the comparisons, though I'm not consciously attempting to be Kingian, but I do like those like sort of big sprawling horror novels of the 90s or the 80s and 90s, right? The sort of ones that are leggy and sort of a little more epic.
None of the reviews said it was in any way derivative of King at all. Yeah. I mean, none of them, which is cool. You know what I mean? Like, that's great.
They also said that Stephen King has a couch of human skin in his office as well. So.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get to. If I could just get to that King level of the human skin couch would be good.
I was going to say, because you're talking about reviews, and one of the things I thought you did so well in the book too was describing the apples. And so how did you go about doing? Did you find these hipster apples? And
yeah, that's how I like got into the apple thing. It was like I went to an orchard at our farmer's market, and they had all these apples in bins, and I was like, this is a joke, right? Like, none of these are real. I joke, like I was kid, but it sounded like they were talking about like vampires and hobbits. It's like Lord Lamborn. That sounds like a vampire. Like Limbertwig sounds like some hobbit shit.
Were you writing the book during this, or is this all part? Oh, this is before.
Yeah, this is like a couple years before. And I was just like, I'm going to buy one of these and take them home. And then like up until that point, I didn't care anything about apples. I didn't even really like apples that much. And they all tasted different and great and weird and interesting. And I was like, why does this exist? And then you kind of do that, rabbit hole thing that writers are probably known for doing. And it's like, suddenly you find out about Johnny Appleseed.
My neck of the woods. I'm in Massachusetts.
See, you get it. Yeah.
As far as I know, you would not have apples if not for Pennsylvania would not have apples if not for Johnny Appleseed.
Johnny Appleseed. That's right. And he was weirdly a Swedenborgian. For those who don't know, that's a religion that there's a town in Pennsylvania called Brynathan, and most of the town is this religion called Swedenborgianism.
Well, hold on, everybody, just stop.
But this ties into that because he was sneaky, and there was a rule that if you planted a seed and a tree grew there, anybody could eat from the apple regardless of whose land it was, but then he would kind of own the land. Is that right?
Well, yeah, back then, like, land ownership could be determined by the breadth and depth of your agriculture. So he would just create these massive orchards, throwing seeds left and right, and then he could sell those orchards and have huge parcels of land.
I don't know. This sounds like a scam to me.
It is.
This is very dicey.
It's dicey. I know it's questionable. Johnny Appleseed is questionable,
and so many people think he's just a folk character.
Yeah, that he wasn't even real. Yeah, no, John Chapman. He was legit. But there were also, like, because there's no real primary sources for the guy, like the stories of him having like a pot on his head and traveling around with a bear. Some people, like, there are reports of him having been seen with animals.
Yeah, because he's like, oh, get off my land. Here's my bear. I own it. I dropped an orchard here.
Yeah, trained attack bears. No one's talked about that.
Is that a real thing, apple picking season? Like, do they actually have an apple picking season?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I go every year.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, what, Jay?
It's like a family thing. We go every year. The family, the kids go. You basically pay for a big bag or a bushel, and then you go and pick your own apples. You do the work for them.
I feel very urban right now. I feel very, very urban. Like, literally, you put the kids in the car and go pick apples.
Yeah, and then you get some cider donuts, which are fucking fantastic.
Cider donuts. That's actually why you go.
That's why you go. Chuck, in one of the, and I forget the name of the apple, but in the book you describe one of them as tasting like licorice. Did you taste one that tasted like licorice?
Oh, yeah. Some Russes will have a funky licorice taste to them. Yeah,
really.
There's apples that taste like bananas. There's apples that taste like pineapple.
That's bananas.
Yeah, it's weird. Apples are weird. They're weird. It's a weird fruit.
In terms of, it just looks like a perfect book to adapt into a film or given that it's long, a limited series.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your Hollywood experience? Because I was reading some of the and some of Jay. You guys can commiserate, but it's no joke. It's no joke as a writer, is it, Chuck?
No, man, it's hard out there. Like, my dalliances out west make publishing seem super cozy. Like, anytime I have a problem with publishing, I'm like, just go hang out on the West Coast for a minute and see how that goes. It's a weird. Yeah, I did like the Sundance Screenwriters Lab, and I had a pilot at one point with TNT, and it was a weird experience. Trippy.
A lot of cooks in those kitchens, aren't there? I mean, you guys talk about publicists. I mean, publishers.
Yeah,
publicists as well, but no, publishers. But it's nothing like dealing with networks and producers.
It takes many years for an apple tree to produce fruit. It takes even more years for a project to go through and be made into a show or a movie for a writer.
And most of the time, these trees are producing no fruit. They're just growing up and then dying.
Yes.
Then growing up and then dying.
And then a little part of you dies inside as well.
Yeah, a little part of you. Yeah, but you get paid for the thing dying, which is weird.
The way you describe the ruby slipper as almost like so red that it's black. Is there an apple that exists that could be on screen in the movie, or would it have to be CGI, special made apple?
Oh no, yeah, God, like an Arkansas black, they're almost purple.
I love that he knows the name Arkansas black. Let me just throw that one out there,
Yeah, or a black Oxford, black twig, even the red delicious, like, which is a garbage apple. Some of them you can see they are so blood red.
Those are some garbage apples.
This garbage, not delicious.
The red delicious community is going to send us nasty mail.
I know. Well, you know what? Come at me. It's a Judas apple. You should get a better apple. Get the Honeycrisp at least.
Well, like Jason was saying, that you write really well in the voice of a teenage girl. The other things that I read was that you write really authentic, full rounded queer characters. Was that something that, I mean, which was really cool to read, because they were so taken aback by it. Like, you didn't have, it was just that they had all the similar qualities that they want to have
Yeah.
as, as a people, fully rounded human beings. How did that, is that something that you were always interested in? How did that land into this book?
Yeah, I mean, part of the thing was because the book was sort of about a level of othering and sort of a cult in the town forming, and that sort of like, rich versus poor classism sort of thing, but also like that who belongs in the town and who doesn't. So it felt kind of natural to have the protagonists be, sort of classically, people who have been marginalized in other at different levels. So, uh, but I think it's because people will ask like, well, what's your secret to writing characters like that and making like a teen girls? Like part of it is just like treating people seriously and like treating them with with authenticity and empathy, if not sympathy, empathy. Just like everybody gets to be who they are somehow, and trying to just examine that and examine all the things that and then listening too, right? Like be having friends and listening to them and talking to people, and you kind of just pick up on stuff as a writer. I mean, we're all kind of magpies for that stuff, and putting that into work as seriously as possible.
What about apples?
That farmers market thing was the first day where I was like, what the hell is going on here? And then I kept going back to that same orchards table. And they're not an orchard that's local to me. They're maybe like an hour and a half south. But they would come up this far to do the farmers market. And so I got to know the people at the orchard, and both not only how they work with the heirloom/antique apples, and also how they do their own apple production. Like they crossbreed their own varieties and make their own varieties. And so I just kind of got fascinated with like, why are there 7,000 apples, but there's 10 at your grocery store? Like, what is that?
Yeah, but we don't know about them.
We don't know about them. And then there's,
Sure.
you find out about guys like this, like Tom Brown, who like rescues all these heirloom apples. Like he's like an apple detective.
Yeah, there's a picture of him on the internet with like a table of like a bajillion apples.
A table of apples. Yeah. He's like one of a number of people who do that sort of thing, where they go out and they try to find, like, I heard about this apple that was the sweetest apple my grandmother ever tasted. Let's go see if we can find it. And it's this.
I've never heard of this.
They would have disappeared from the world had it not been for Tom or people.
That's right.
Like him.
And he's the fascinating thing is like, right, because for those who don't know, like to get an apple,
nobody knows.
An apple, like the seeds don't work. Nobody knows. No, just me.
I'm learning.
Yeah, which means I can just make this all up as I go. Which is cool.
No. I don't think you are. You can't make it up this specific. Well, maybe you can. You're a writer, but it's pretty specific.
The whole time you've just been talking about tomatoes and fooling us all that it's apples.
I don't know anything about apples. Apples are garbage. No, yeah, like you can't get, if you eat an apple and you like that apple, you don't get that apple by planting its seeds. You have to take branches off the tree of that apple and stick them onto a young, healthy sapling and make that tree grow the apples you want. So, which is what Johnny Appleseed, by the way, would not do. He was like, he thought that was against God. Grafting was against God. So, it just was one of those things that's fascinating to me, that like, to get these apples, like these guys have to go out not just to find the apple itself, but then to find the tree and to take a little cutting off the tree and then graft it to something new. And then they have suddenly a tree again. Then they can sell both the apples and they can sell the trees if they want.
And then they become, there's a lot of the names are usually created by the people who created those apples, correct?
Yeah. Once upon a time, where people who discover them, or it might be like down to who found it in their yard, because like you plant an apple seed and you get a roulette wheel apple. It's random. And 1 out of 100 might taste good, and the rest are going to be probably good for maybe cider at best. So, that one that's good, you try to grow that again.
What's fascinating is, so I'm a gardener. I have lots of plants and trees and all this stuff. I don't have apples because they get a lot of diseases. So it's amazing that a lot of these trees and varieties have been able to survive for so long, just out there on their own doing their thing.
Yeah, there's some good disease-resistant heirlooms too. I have I planted 2 trees, my first 2 trees actually, like 2 years ago. I have an Egremont russet and a white winter pearmain.
That was going to be my next question. How has this progressed for you? I mean, obviously you're planting apple trees now.
I started my own orchard.
I'm writing novels. I've planted apple trees.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Chuck Appleseed. That's what we got now. It's
Chucky Appleseed. Yeah.
And so is it like, so I have pear trees, and I know you need a different variety to pollinate another variety. Is it the same thing with apples?
Yeah, and actually I bought 2 varieties that will pollinate each other, but they'll also be pollinated by, like, right outside my office, I have a monster-sized crab apple tree that was here when we got the place. And so crab apples, even though they're not precisely the same, and apples are not native to America, but crab apples are.
Right.
They will pollinate with crab apples.
Nature is fascinating, isn't it?
Nature's weird.
Wait, apples are not native to America?
No, they're kind of a colonizer.
Look at Jason's. I know.
No,
You got to catch up on your apple reading. What do you mean?
Europeans brought them. Yeah,
they brought apples and started planting apple trees, and this is how it all and all these varieties of apples have just progressed over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Have you tried an apple from Europe or from another country?
Not while I. Well, yeah. I was in Spain this summer, and they have it's pretty nasty apples because they make cider out of them, and they're not apples you want to eat. But they are good for cider production.
So what are some of the stuff that, I mean, obviously I can find apples in your kitchen right now, right? A variety of apples?
I just used them all last night, but I did have a whole.
What did you make?
I made I just cooked apples. I literally have a cooked apples recipe that I make with orange juice.
And what do you put them in the fridge?
Yeah, I'll put them in the fridge, and then they're good with, like, if you warm them up with ice cream or with on oatmeal, granola.
What's not good with ice cream? I mean, let's not kid ourselves, Chuck.
I want to know pie or apple crisp, because there's a debate there.
I do crisp. First of all, because a pie is, like, hard.
Yeah, it's hard making a good pie. Yeah.
But a crisp is easy, and it's kind of just as satisfying.
Oh, the crunchies on top are so satisfying.
Yeah.
All right, so one of the things we like to do is we have a listener question.
Ooh.
So I'm going to ask you a listener question. Sherry A asks, with a last name like Wendig, please tell me, will we get a Wendigo book at some point?
Wendigo.
Probably a Wendigo book.
Wendigo book. Yeah, I didn't even know what how about this? I didn't even know what it was. What is a Wendigo book?
It's like a Native American, I think, Algonquin spirit, like a cannibal spirit that eats people's hearts or freezes people's hearts. I don't quite know.
It also looks kind of like a Bigfoot, right?
Yeah, but it's got antlers and maybe a skull face. There's a lot of different depictions. It's, believe it or not, that's one of the things Stephen King already covered. The Wendigo is in Pet Cemetery, I think. I think it's the Wendigo.
I apologize to Sherry for butchering her question, but thank you for answering it, Chuck.
Sherry's waited her whole life to ask about a Wendigo, and here it is.
I mean, she had a clever little question, and I couldn't even pronounce the thing right. Jesus.
Maybe she wants to know about dingoes. Maybe that's what she really wants.
The dingo ate your Wendigo.
Of course, we got to go there.
Did this book? I mean, it's perfectly released with apple picking season. Was that on purpose?
It was intentional, but we didn't. I mean, you never know if it's going to line up. But we did get it done at the right time and had that window. And yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously for you, you knew apple season was coming as you're coming to completion, and you sort of had a timeline, right? As you were completing the book, were you getting close, going, I'm going to make this. Oh, this is going to happen.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, once apple season is done, I don't do apples again. Like, I don't go buy apples all year.
Oh, so you get a break from it. That's fantastic.
Let's tell people why, and it's covered in the book, because they're just frozen and sit there in idle state for a year.
Yep, they do. They sit in the climate-controlled chambers, and they come out, and they're often bad, especially like the later in the season you go. You get an apple in like June, it's probably not good.
Yeah, and sometimes I think they even sit there for multiple seasons because they're just filling up in a warehouse.
I think so too. Yeah.
Look at it. We're really breaking down we're getting to the core of the apple.
That's right. We're planting seed.
Oh no. The puns begin. God, I wanted to make more intelligent conversation about the book, but I didn't spend the time to read 600 pages, unlike somebody here in this podcast.
Well, here's the thing. I was worried I wasn't going to be able to get through the whole book, and then I got hooked. And one night I pounded the pavement. I stayed up super late, which is not really my thing anymore, and I paid for it the next day. So Chuck it's kind of on him that I was an absent parent on Tuesday.
Well, that seems to be the thing. Well, that seems to be the thing. I mean, it's the classic page turner. This one.
It is, and it's one of those things where it's such a weird concept. Here's a horror story or a thriller story about apples, and you want to know why they are having this impact on the characters within the story. So you just keep going.
Well, in the same way that apples have had an impact on the writer. I mean, it was so cool to listen to the fact that he just literally started becoming passionate and curious about apples and the varieties of apples.
That's life, man. That's what I love about life. We cannot give up. We have to keep finding new things we love, and that move
And then
us.
how it progressed.
Yes.
How it
Mhm.
progressed. I mean, it was in no small way, it contributed to him writing this book, which is cool.
And he's got 2 apples trees in his yard now. That's amazing.
He's planting them. Are you kidding? He's planting
He's
them.
carrying it forward.
Well, I hope everybody goes out and gets this book. Yeah, thanks for listening.
Music by Denny Nucci. Produced and edited by the same 2 people you heard hosting this show, because they have no friends.